So I just want to show you why an H setup might work. Okay. So under here, there's a big zone, right? A big leg out. You see that? And then it forms a split and another big leg up. This split, what do you think about it? Well, let's look at the 3 minute. Let's zoom in. Is there anything there? Nothing, really. I mean, this split doesn't even line up with it, does it? Let's go to the 5 minute distal line of that. Not even close. The distal line of the 3 minute is the proximal line of the 5 minute. Really does not line up at all. It's completely off. And that just shows that there's really nothing there. Okay, so there's just a big zone here, and then it goes upwards, and then it comes down and goes upwards, and then the next bar comes down, and you're like, okay, well at this point, and I'm talking when this bar, this green bar, is down here in the in this zone now. We want to buy there, and I did. I just did. I bought there because that's an H setup. That's a holding level setup. But the real reason this holding level setup works is because underneath there's really nothing. It needs to create a zone. The price always likes to create itself walls to bounce to and from. Okay? It likes to create a place where it can bounce off of. Just it's a big shoulder, it just likes to bounce, you know? And if there's no boundary that it can bounce off of, it has free range to go all the way down to here. And really, unless someone steps in, and that takes a little bit more effort, in my opinion, unless someone steps in randomly. Or, you could see this as a zone where it's like supply, 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 creating a new demand. There's nothing showing there, but sometimes that happens. But what is, to put it simple, look at the price, look at the chart, and see that there's nothing really holding it up. And this is a perfect time for a holding level because there's nothing holding it. So that's why the holding zone was created. The holding level was created. And we bet on the creation of the holding level. Now, whether it's used again or not is another story. If it can be used again, that it could. And that's what usually happens. That's what's happening right now. This holding level is created because it wants to condense price. It just wants to hold up price. I'm not saying this is going to hold all day. I'm just saying that it's probably going to be bought up a little bit, at least to slow price down. Because look, this is a boundary. And they needed to create the boundary because there wasn't any boundary underneath it. This is exactly the time where it wants to create the boundary. Okay? If the bulls want any chance in holding this price upwards and trying to go up, it needs to create a boundary. So that's why the holding setups work. So when does an H setup work? When a boundary is not around. That's when an H setup works. When it needs to be around. An H setup works when it needs to work. Okay? That's when an H setup works. It needs to work. And it needed to work because there was no boundary in and around this area. And if it wants to continue upwards, it sure needs a boundary. And you could have taken the trade again. Maybe if you nailed the H setup, you can take that holding level setup that you took already for maybe a 1-to-1 or a 0.5-to-1. Yeah, probably a 1-to-1. Anyways, if you get a discount on the price. Um, Discounts work. Like coupons work a big deal. This is a big deal. Anyways, that's kind of why an H setup works. When an H setup works, not why, because there's plenty of times when H setups just don't work. This is a time when H setups do work. It's because there's a significant amount of space. It's like a bull fib without any zones. You know what I'm saying? It's just a big bull fib and there's no zones and it's like, well, it needs to create a zone. It needs to create a zone. Like what's missing? I'm anticipating just looking at it just well, something's missing. There's no zone. Oh, that's why. It's creating a zone now, and that's why it folded down. We bought that small zone. We bought there and then it folded upwards, broke the high and went upwards, created a little leg out and it went 3.5 to 1. So I got out at 2 to 1 right here. You could definitely go more than that because it's such a tight zone. But anyways, that's kind of when an H setup works. It's when it needs to work. It's when there is no zone to really plot off of. It needs a zone to plot off of. That's what's missing. When it's missing, where's the H setup? Well, where's anything? That's when an H setup can be formed. And uh, that's a profitable strategy if you do it correctly. The problem with any strategy is that you'll take H setups not with that in mind, and you'll take H setups when it's not needed, um, and it will just skew and dirty your data, and it could be more profitable. Who knows? It depends on how much you risk per trade. It depends on the variance in your weight, in your position sizing, because that's a whole nother tangent. Because you can be profitable on a non-profitable strategy if you choose which trades are going to work or not. So it's really um, if you want to be standard, you just risk the same amount of money on every single trade and figure out. So if this is an H setup strategy, risk the same amount each time, and then only take the ones that um, are necessary or the ones that fit this criteria that says where is the H setup? That's when an H setup is created. And look at this. Coming down to the 5-minute distal line break. See, it's sliced right through. It's interesting. It's interesting. It needed to create this though. Needed to. At least to fuel the fire to go down or fuel the fire to go up. Because it fueled longs, but then once the stop loss is hit um, of the longs, there's fuel to go down. So that's why it was buying up there. But these guys get rid of their order right away. Um, so yeah, that's what's going on. That's when an H setup works.